The Bible is enchanting. It is a novel that is more than a novel. It's an inspired novel. It is an inspired story of lifetimes and generations through millennia, plural. Now, the last message we did, and this one here is Bible reading number 290. We're going to start here. We started with Abraham now. Abraham has a child, and the child's name is Isaac, which means laughter. And God told Abraham to offer that son as a sacrifice there in basically where Jebush or later Jerusalem would be, there Moriah, the Mount Moriah, which is in the top of Jerusalem. And he did, and God blessed him because he believed him. The New Testament, Paul writes, he says, Abraham believed God, and he offered his son, even though he was dead, that he would live, that would be resurrected. He believed in the resurrection because God promised Abraham that through that son, not Isaac or not Ishmael, would be his promised seed. Now, going back a little bit in time, after Abram, by the way, left Egypt, and he came out there, Sarah told him, you go take my servant. Now, Pharaoh's daughter became a handmaiden, not a princess. She was raised in the palace of Pharaoh, and then she ends up being a handmaid for Sarah. Sarai at this time. Sarah said, you go and cohabit with her, and the child that shall be my child that she shall have. And all the time that she was doing this, she believed it was Abraham's fault she wasn't pregnant. But the very first time that he goes with Hagar, she catches seed and she's pregnant. And she has a child. And he circumcises the child, and God gives him circumcision, and he circumcises all of his servants, and then he baptizes them first, and then he circumcises them. And he goes down and he saves Lot from the princes that have, or the kings that have surrounded the 5 cities of the plain, Sodom and Gomorrah and the other cities. He rescues them, and they offer to give him a great ransom for rescuing them, and Abraham said, I didn't do it, Jehovah did it. And Abraham tithed to Melchizedek, which was king of Salem at that time, which was where Jerusalem would be, and he gave him the 10th, all the best of everything that they took from all of the kings that had captured Lot and the other kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, etc. They go back, they become so wicked that God tells Abraham that he's going to destroy those cities. And he goes down and he sends 2 angels down there to rescue Lot out of it, and they don't want to go. And this is where we get the word sodomites. The sodomites there, they wanted to have sex with the angels because they look good unto them. Let's rape them. And Lot protected them, offered to give his daughters to them as a ransom for them. They could rape them instead of the angels. Well, the next morning, by the way, when they came upon Lot's house, they tried to break into the house, and the angels blinded all of them. They got them out of there the next morning. They all left, and God told them to the angels, do not look back. Do not look back. You're leaving this, you don't look back. It's evil, you don't look back. According to the book of Jasher, Lot had already lost one daughter to torture to these heathens. And he didn't want to leave, but God led him out to these angels. Now there are 2 angels that we always see escorting people through life, even escorting people to heaven after they die, their spirits and souls. And these are two witnesses and two angels, very powerful beings. Lot was leaving the city and the plains of the city, and his wife looked back and turned into a pillar of salt. His two daughters got him drunk and had sexual intercourse with him. They caught seed and got pregnant. One of them, the Ammonites was from, and the other one, the Moabites. The word Moabite means water from the father. Water, semen from the father. That's what she named those people. And the Ammonites, people of my people, were all inbred, is what that means. Ammonite means inbred. People of my people. In the meanwhile, Abraham has a son, Isaac. He gets he already has a son, Ishmael. And by the way, Ishmael means God listens. Heard by God. God heard that little old slave girl now that was a princess, Hagar. Hagar means wanderer now. And he heard her prayers because Sarah was being viciously cruel to her. And he told her, go back and listen to her and obey her, and I'm going to bless you. And then, after Sarah has her child, she gets mad at Isaac and tells Abraham to kick her out and kick that boy out. It broke his heart to get his son. When God said you're going to have a son, he said, I already got one. I already got one, God. I don't need another son. But Sarah's going to have the son. Sarah, Hagar is a bondwoman. Sarah is a princess. You're going to have a free child from a free woman. And he did like Sarah said again. He kicked her out, and she was about to die out there in the desert, and God appeared unto her. Jehovah Jireh appeared unto her now. And she said, and she called him the Lord my shepherd. Jehovah my shepherd. The first person that called Jehovah her shepherd was Hagar. And she said, you're going to live. And they made a spring up there so they'd have water. And you're going to have 12 princes out of him, and they're going to be mighty princes. And I'm going to do this because of Abraham. I'm going to bless his seed because of Abraham. Now, in the meanwhile, Isaac, Sarah dies. By the way, God changes Abraham's name to Abram from Abram, exalted father, to Abraham, exalted father of a multitude. And Sarah, from Sarai to Sarah, that means exalted princess. It also means contentious. The word prince, a prince gets to be a prince because he fights. He contends for his kingdom. Well, Isaac's mother dies, and Abram sends his faithful servant Eliezer, which he was going to give everything to, because he had no seed before Ishmael. He's going to send him back to Haran, and he's going to go back up there, and he's going to bargain for his cousin, one of his cousins, to come down there and marry Isaac. He didn't send Isaac, he sends Eliezer. And he goes up there, and we know that Leah, or not Leah, but Rebecca meets him at the well, and God answers his prayer, and she agrees to come back, and she goes back, and she's a very young girl, and goes back and becomes his wife, but she doesn't have a child for 20 years. And then when she has a child, she has twins, 2 children. And God promised her while she was pregnant, the children were just, the babies in her womb were just twisting her guts up in there. Her womb was just twisted up with wrangling in her guts. And God appeared unto her and told her, in your womb are 2 nations fighting, but the younger shall be the stronger, and he's the one that will be blessed. And the first one came out was Esau, and they called him Red and Hairy. And the next one was called Jacob. Jacob means one that contends, one that overcomes, one that follows the heel, so to speak. But that was the promised son. Well, Rebekah told Abraham or Isaac all about all this stuff. But Isaac loved Esau more than he did Jacob, the promised son. Jacob was the breadwinner of the family. He was strong. He was a powerful man, very powerful man. Powerful man. A fighter, a warrior. And he protected the sheep and the cattle and the goats and the elephants and whatever they had. He protected all of them from, like David did. He was a powerful man. Esau was nothing but a playboy. He was a good time Charlie. That's all he wanted to do is have a good time. And he didn't, it doesn't say he did anything as far as work. He was always out hunting and bringing home wild game for his father. And some people like the taste of wild game, and Isaac did. And one of the times that Esau came in half-starved, he met his brother Jacob, and he said to him, "Give me something to eat." And he had the cheapest commodity, which is lentil soup. It's like a small bean. It tastes a lot like pinto beans. And he had wine and he had bread. And Jacob told Esau, "Now, Esau, you don't care anything about your birthright, but I do." He said, "I want you to give me my birthright for this dinner." And he said, "So what? It don't mean anything to me. I'm dying. I don't care about my birthright." But he did. He's lying. But he legitimately sold his birthright. God said he hated his birthright. He hated it. And he sold it to Jacob. It's no longer his. But, and I'm sure the whole household heard about this, and all the servants too, including Isaac, but it didn't matter. It comes a long time, Isaac is old, and God blinds Isaac, by the way. He blinds him. He blinds Isaac so he couldn't see who he was going to bless. Because he was dishonest, he was not after the promises of God. God had to use that woman. He had to use Rebekah to bring forth the promises. And then Rebekah overhears Isaac telling Esau to go out and kill some game for him and fix it like he likes it and bring it to him, and he's going to bless him, and he's going to bless him in spite of what God wants. So Rebekah goes to work. She's going to make sure that the right son is blessed. Now, a lot of people call Jacob a mama's boy and all that kind of glory. This man is a powerful man. This man is the one that's protecting the whole family. He's the breadwinner of the whole family. Isaac's too old. They got servants all over. But Jacob is out there fighting off everybody, taking care of any interloper, any thief that comes along. He's taking care of all of it. He's doing the whole thing. And so Rebekah tells Jacob, "Go out and get a young goat and bring him to me," a young billy goat. If billy goats do have a strong odor. She's going to get a young billy goat, and kill him and dress him and bring him to me, and I'll fix him like your father likes. And he'll think it's wild game, and then he will bless you. Jacob wasn't really for that, except that his mother said, "This is God's will. Do it. Just listen to me. I take all the blame." Not Jacob. She said, "I take the blame." And so he does what his mother says. He goes in there and he prepares it. And Jacob tells Rebekah, he said, "You know, I don't smell like Esau does. He stinks. He's a stinker. He will know that I'm not." So she gets Esau's smelly clothes. She takes the goat and she takes the hair and she makes sleeves for him in his clothes, so it's hair all over, and it smells. He stinks, and he got hair all over. And so he goes in there, and Isaac said, "Who is it?" And he said, "Your oldest son." "Okay. Your voice sounds like Jacob, but you smell like Esau. He stinks." And he tells him, "Come here, I'm going to feel of you." So he feels of him, and he feels that rough stuff. He's, "Well, your voice sounds like Jacob, but you're Esau, all right." So he eats his food, and then he begins to bless him. And this is what he's going to do to Esau. He's going to make Jacob Esau's servant. He's going to thwart the promises of God. And so he blesses him, and then he leaves. And not long after he leaves, here comes Esau with that wild game ready for him. And he said, "What are you? Who's there at my tent?" He said, "Esau, your oldest son. You were just here." "No, I wasn't." And then both of them began to wail together. Instead of following God's will, they were contrary to God's will. The woman had to stand in the gap. Called Jacob a trickster and a deceiver and all that. As far as I can tell, Jacob was one of the greatest men in the Bible. He was always looking after what God wanted for him to do in his life. And he was always the breadwinner. He was always a go-getter. Well, Esau said he's going to kill Jacob, and Rebekah tells Jacob, "Go to my brothers to Haran. You go up there, you get yourself a wife." And so when he gets ready to leave, now Esau has already married Canaanite, stinking Canaanite pagan women. And they smell just like he does, and they stink in the nostrils of his mother and father. But still, Daddy's going to bless the boy, the playboy, still. So he takes off, Jacob does, and Abraham blesses him. And he goes up there and he meets Rebekah, or Rachel that is, his cousin, at the well. At the well, at the well, at the well, always at the well. This matrimony starts. And he goes up there, and there's a great stone, and there's several men standing out there, and it takes a lot of men to move the stone, because it's a big stone. And he asked them if they know who Laban is, and they said, "Yeah, Laban means whitey, by the way, white boy." He probably had red hair, just like Rebekah did, and Esau. But when they get blonde, people with red hair, many times hair just at 30 years old, it just turns white. And that's why they probably call him Whitey. And so he meets Rachel, and he kisses her and kisses her and kisses her and holds her there at the well. But in the meanwhile, he goes out there and moves that gigantic stone himself. He's strong enough to move it himself. And the guy's sitting there, "Whoa, did you see that? This guy's something else, man." Well, he lived out there with the sheep. Esau's hanging around in the tents of women and all of this and playing the high life, while Jacob is out living and working hard and fighting for his family. Well, Jacob moves that great stone, and then she takes him, he waters her sheep, and then she takes him to her father. And he stays there for 21 years. He tells Laban that he will work 7 years for Rachel because he loves her. She is the love of his life. Well, at the marriage feast, Laban gets Jacob drunk and then slips in Leah instead of Rachel. And he cohabits with her and wakes up in the morning, and it's not the woman he loves. So he goes to his father-in-law and says, "What in the world have you done to me?" And he says, "Oh, well, according to the law, Kohlrabi, I can't give you my youngest daughter first. I have to give you the oldest one. And I'm going to give you her handmaid, so you'll have 4 wives. You'll have 2 concubines or 4 wives, 2 wives and 2 concubines, but all of them were, the children they all had were children of inheritance, so they were his wives. Jacob wanted 1 wife, Rachel. He ended up with 4. He ended up with 12 children. The 2 children that he loved the most were Benjamin and Joseph from Rachel. All the others, all these, we have the 12 tribes of Israel. The boys were deceitful to their father and took Joseph and sold him 2 times. And he went down in Egypt as a slave, but God kept blessing Joseph wherever. Joseph means uncomfortable. It means to increase, no matter what. And no matter what they did to Joseph, and you know, Jacob had made a very beautiful coat for him, a coat of many colors, because this is going to be my heir. And the others were jealous. And so they took him and sold him. They went down there, and then his wife dies in childbirth, Benjamin. And they run out of food. There's a great famine in the land. Jacob doesn't go down there like his grandfather did and just go to the land. He is going to stay there where God told him to. Jacob is a man of faith. He's going to stay in that land. But he sends his sons down to get grain and to take and buy it to trade for it. And they go down there, and Joseph sees the guys that did what they did to him. And he gives them the stuff, but then he says that they stole his divining cup and all of this. And anyway, he keeps one of them for a ransom. And he tells them, you go back and bring your brother Benjamin, or you'll never see this boy again. He goes back there, and Jacob says, you're not going back. I can't trust you boys. I don't trust you at all. We're not going. But they run out of food. And he has to send the boys back. And they go back down, and they send the boys back, and he keeps Benjamin. To make a long story short, he keeps Benjamin. He saw him, and he cries. He cries and he cries. And when he sees Benjamin, he just weeps. This is his brother, his full brother. These all the others are half brothers, but his full brother is there. The one from the woman that Jacob loved, Rachel. And then they send them off, and then he stops them, and they bring back the divining cup, and they bring it back. And in the feast, when they come back, he breaks down and tells them that he's their brother, that they have sold into slavery. He said, you divined evil against me, but God used it for good. Because God's going to use me to save all of you. And here he's the #1 man in Egypt. He's like the king. Mm-hmm. The Pharaoh doesn't do anything without Joseph. He tells Pharaoh what to do. And you know that the famine was coming in the land, the 7 years of famine, 7 fat cows and 7 skinny cows and all of this. It was all prophecy, and Joseph interpreted that, and then Pharaoh put him over all of that. Now the 12 sons of Jacob are powerful, all powerful warriors. They're like Jacob. They're mighty men of valor. Meanwhile, down in Canaan, they come up to Shechem, and Shechem wants the daughter, Dinah, and her name is Dinah or Dan. Dinah is feminine for Dan, which means judge. And Shechem wants her for a wife, and he captures her. But as far as I can tell from the Hebrew language, he has not raped her, because she's still a virgin. And he meets with Jacob and the sons, and Simeon and Levi, which is her brothers. They say that we will not allow her to marry this Canaanite unless all of you are circumcised like we are to become, you know, believers in the one true God. And so they all did that. And they gave a tremendous price for her. But when the boys had all the males in the whole city, Shechem had them circumcised. They all believed. They're all new converts. Levi and Simeon go in there and they kill every man in the city, and they take all of them for all their wives and their children for slaves. The ones that they didn't slave, they had become their property now. Jacob just bewails this situation. He said, "You violent Hamas, you ravenous, vicious men." And even on his deathbed, he curses them one more time. And they have a Canaanite war. And they have to kill about 100,000 Canaanites in that war. And those boys did it. The Canaanites were extremely scared of those boys. Well, when those boys go into Egypt after Joseph sends for them, they go into Egypt and they fight Pharaoh's wars. And as long as those boys are alive, those Egyptians were scared to death of them. Because they were warriors beyond anything. Joseph was a general and they fought all the wars. Well, Joseph died and all his brothers died, and by the way, according to the book of Jasher, all of them are entombed in caskets, coffins. And when they leave the land, after Moshe comes up, Moses, now Moses is born. Moses' mother is his aunt, and she's 128 years old according to the book of Jasher when she has this child. She has 2 other children. She has Miriam, and she has Aaron, and then Moses or Moshe. When Moses is born, they put him in the river, finally. After a while, they hid him for quite a while. But then they got to expose him just like Pharaoh had said, you have to throw your children in the Nile, you have to sacrifice them. I'm going to kill you if you don't. You don't kill that child. Any child that's born, a male child's got to go in the river. And so they built a little basket. How many baskets were floating down that river? These boys. How many baskets were going down the river at the same time? The crocodiles and the fish eating them, and they were drowning, etc. But God, in His providence, watched over Moshe, Moses. Moses means to rescue.
To draw them off.
God watched over him. And brought him through. Pharaoh's daughter, God touched her heart, and she had compassion on him, and she called him Moshe. Now Moses had a whole bunch of names. His aunt named him one thing, his see if I can go back here and find Moses. Now, when Moses was born, like I said, he had many names. They called him Shebar. They called him Jephthah. Let's see if I can find all of Moses' names here. Written down somewhere. Anyway, they had every kind of name for him. His name was Jared, Chebar, Abigdor, Abi-Sochol, Shemaiah. And all of these names they gave to him, but the one that God used was the one that Pharaoh's daughter gave to him, which was mean to rescue. To rescue, or to call out. It talks about him living there in Pharaoh's palace for 40 years, and then he killed an Egyptian when he saw him. Now, by the way, Cecil B. Mills and the Exodus and all this, that story is not true. Joseph's family, they know who they were. The Levites were not bricklayers, they were goldsmiths and silversmiths. They were the ones making all these beautiful coffins and stuff. That's Moses' family. Now, his mother and father, when Pharaoh's daughter saw Moses crying in the crib, she called him Moses. And then Miriam was out there and she said, do you want somebody that can lactate for this child? And she said, yes. So she hired his mother to raise him. So Moses was raised with his mother and his father and his brothers. He knew who they were. It's not no big secret to him. He wasn't taken away. His mother was his nurse. And then he knew her children. He knew who his family was. He knew he was a Hebrew all the time. He didn't find out one morning. But he was raised as a prince of Egypt. And for 40 years he was a ruler in Egypt. And then finally, when he kills the Egyptian, Pharaoh finds out about it and he puts a warrant out on for dead or alive. And so Moses takes off and he goes into the land of Midian. And he meets a girl by the well again. A girl at the well. And he meets the woman he's going to marry at the well. And he fights off of these terrible, because he's a powerful man too. Moses is a powerful man. He's a warrior. He's a general. And he said that the girls came down and he said, this Egyptian down there came and he defended us against these people and he watered our flocks and everything. So you bring him here. Anyway, he ended up marrying one of the daughters. And he has 2 children. And that's the previews of coming attraction for the next story. Our Father, we send this message out. We pray that you use it for your honor and glory, that you just feed your children with your word and with the history of your people. The line of faith and the believers that you've protected all the way down through the ages. Father, please forgive me where I failed you. Use this message for your honor and glory. In Jesus' name.